Okay, first up is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
So
I'll second. Any items that anyone want to pull out? Nope, okay. Any public comment in relation to the consent agenda? All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Moving on to board motions, presentations, and resolutions. First up is the Devon train station area pedestrian improvements bid award.
John will lead you through that one.
Great. Thanks, Sean.
Good evening. So long awaited, you have your bid award proposed tonight. So back in January, working with Bowman as your traffic engineer, we publicly posted and duly advertised for the proper number of days in advance notice the bid package for the Devon train station pedestrian connection project. Last Wednesday, we had the bid opening. We had 12 bidders at the end of the process, which we thought was a success. The low bidder that came in as the lowest responsible bidder that's qualified and fully vetted was G&B Construction at $111,804.05. This is a project that we, within the bidding documents, we put a completion date by 6/30. So you have a short period of time and they should have a quick mobilization once the notice to proceed is issued. So with the advice of staff and the traffic engineer, it's a motion attached to award the bid to G&B Construction.
Very good. And we feel confident with G&B Construction handling the bid.
We do. We've done thorough research on them. They're doing a number of projects in the region, Tredyffrin, Radnor. We were able to contact some of their other projects that they're either underway on or have done. So I think that's probably helped with their mobilization costs is that they have several really local projects. So Travis Bowman was comfortable with them. It's something that Bowman has done work with them. They're new to me, but it's not a bad thing.
I assume the projects were sidewalk projects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're doing a
I
lot of
assume so,
sidewalks.
but just want to make sure.
A lot of, some simple, but a lot of sidewalks, trails, culverts. So, and in general, this comes in significantly below what your budgeted total was or expected outcome was, which will begin to evaluate either keeping it under budget or if there's any other roadway improvements in their area to consider. So,
how much was the award? We got the.
you received a DCED grant from the MTF for 200,000, and then you'd also budgeted some allocation from your sidewalk fund. But the DCED MTF grant was 200,000.
Right. I noticed the top bid was 3 times the low bid. Is that at all worrying? That maybe they're seeing things the others aren't.
I'd say that's my experience, that you get those ranges in these things.
Sometimes they don't know if they're gonna be the only bidder. So it doesn't cost them anything to throw in an absurd bid. Looking through the numbers that they put in, there was a lot of just inaccurate values assigned to some of the work assignments.
Right,
The scope of the project.
And we have to take the lowest qualified bidder. We have no
Lowest
choice.
qualified, yeah. And again, you have on Tuesday, you had 2 bidders, and on Wednesday, you had 12, so. There's good interest, it got good circulation through the industry.
Very good. Any other board comment?
And you see the note about the $3,000 scope increase for the engineer.
I was gonna get to that. So there's the 2 motions, we'll cover that as well right now. So the first motion would be to accept to award the bid. The second motion is the second item in the packet here. There was an increased number of meetings, both on site and with some of the residents when planning out the site scope for this project, particularly on Waterloo near Berkeley. So Bowman had just asked for a not to exceed of an additional $3,000. They expected probably be $2,000 that they need, but there's just a couple extra site visits and with the rest of the project coming in under budget, it seemed like a reasonable accommodation. So 2 separate motions.
How much are we paying them outside of that?
sorry,
In other words, is it a 10% increase or a 2% increase in the amount we're paying them?
oh, I think that'd be I'm not sure, I'd have to pull up what their contract is.
Yeah.
It's not a very large number that they
Yeah,
have signed
they're-
as oversight.
You know, the construction estimate was so their bill is probably on the order of a handful of tens of thousands, so somewhere in between 2 and 10. The reality is we put them on a short leash and then we make them come back to you when they want more, so, it's worked well. The things that they did were necessary and they contributed to your solution. When you needed the information, the extra information they provided.
And throughout the process of the bidding process, they were able to put together a package that got you in a good low bidder, so.
Okay, any other questions or comments? And I assume for the engineering increase, like this, what they're asking for is what our expectations would be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to see this project starting to get legs and take off. I know there was a train station pedestrian improvement project, and I know about it at time, so I'm excited to see it kind of start to get built. So I'll make a motion to award the Devon train station pedestrian improvement project to GMB Construction for a total of $111,804.05. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Do I have any board comment? Any public comment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. I'll also make a motion to increase the traffic engineer budget for the Devon train station pedestrian improvement project with a not to exceed amount of $3,000. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any other board comment? Any public comment? Yeah, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, moving on to the Berwyn Fire Company change order number 10. John, are you gonna take this one?
Sure, so I can give you the background, during the design and engineering of the Berwyn Fire Station, this is an item that we were made aware of before you even awarded the contract, before you even, did the entire, blessing of the project, so. When originally designed, the goal was that the water meter would be able to be inside the building, kind of like at your residential house. Outside water meter pits are usually reserved for facilities where you expect to be able to sometime in the future necessitate a shut off. It's unlikely you'd ever need a shut off at a fire company, but so this is an outlier that we knew could come back as an item. So Aqua was unwilling to negotiate the meter pit versus the inside the building. So we knew that this was gonna come in this ballpark of somewhere between 65 and 85, I think was the estimate. In your internal process for approving change orders that fall within your change order budget, you have a staff level amount to approve. And then anything above I think it's anything above the $25,000 mark, you're bringing to the board every time for a vote. So we're bringing this one as basically the first change order of this project that came to this level of change. Even though it's a slightly anticipated change, it's still one that we wanted to fully daylight with you.
So what was the makeup of the 85,000? Was it like the meters in the street or something? So they gotta dig the pit, they gotta shore it,
Yeah, so that's
block
all.
traffic.
You know better than I do probably, but all of this is, it's done on the property. So the main is brought onto the Berwyn Fire Company's property. The meter pit itself is a, concrete encasement that's probably just a little bit bigger than a parking space. So it's a sizable structure.
Mhm.
It's not, so that's, everything goes up in cost then.
But it's not in the street, it's tapped off the street line and then it's on the property itself. Okay. Alright.
Which was that took some engineering just to find a location, because it is a tight quarters site. And then the cost of some of these products have gone up, of course, so the concrete's about the same, but some of your metals and fittings have gone up a little bit, so.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, an indoor meter would be like $200-300 versus,
Yeah.
85,000 for this.
And they tried to get that.
Understood.
we made as many calls as we could to, convince Aqua otherwise, but
The utility's the utility, they have jurisdiction.
And to be clear, that it just says here that it's required by Aqua, so this is like a non-negotiable, right? Like there's no, we don't, okay, I just want to make sure. that's-
we tried, we tried the, why would you want to shut off water to a fire company? It's like it didn't seem like you need a second sentence after that, but,
Here we are, okay, do we need a motion to approve the change order?
We
Is
do.
that the, yeah, okay, I'll make a motion to approve the change order, for the, water meter pit. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other board comment? Any public comment?
I mean, I think this is really expensive, right? $85,000 on a very expensive
If you
project.
could state your name and.
Oh,
whether
excuse
you're-
me, I'm Gretchen Garcia, and so I was just, what is the anticipated, like, is there a fund that's set apart that is for these change orders, or is everything additive to the budget?
so within the budget for the construction project, which is shared 70%, 30% with Trinity Township, there is a contingency fund for all of these items that are change orders, and so this falls within that sort of 10% contingency fund. So, and we're
So
still,
what is it, 10%? What is the total of the
this is
contingency?
11,
So about $1 million for the contingency.
11 or $12 million project total. So it's $1 million contingency fund.
So this is less than, let's say, 8 to 10% of the contingency budget then.
For a water meter?
Mhm. It's not insignificant, but it's.
No, for something contemplated too.
It would have been nice to not have, but here we are.
But this is why you have a contingency budget, is for stuff like this that pops up that's unavoidable.
Any other public comment? Hearing none, all in favor of the proposed change order, say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, moving on to solid waste request.
Before we move on for this, we're
Sure.
not gonna talk about change orders 16 and 17. Right,
Those are TBD, it looks like on the.
right, but we should at least be aware of them.
So, good point. Happy to at least briefly touch on them. I haven't received the actual change orders myself. The placeholder here for 16 I can speak to. There's a design change made by your electric supplier when the either architect or engineer designed the electrical service feed to the site. They were using a secondary cable off a local pole. When Pico did their review, they insisted that there be a primary line, which is much heavier duty line, and a transformer be brought to the corner of the property. So this one, again, I reached out to our government affairs contact with Pico to see if there's any negotiation or reconsideration on the engineering, but similar to Aqua, they design it and tell you what it is. This one was less expected. When it was designed, I'm not an electrical engineer or an engineer of any kind, but you look through these plans, this is what they thought sufficed as an appropriate level of electrical power, and Pico disagreed, so.
Is this like a pad mounted above ground transformer, or is it like a vault underground transformer?
This one, I believe, is pad mount near where they currently keep their dumpster.
Hmm.
So it's that, it's sort of where Woodbine terminates.
So I'm gonna bring this up with the fire committee, but some of these changes just seem weird. I use weird, but like you, I'm not an electrical engineer. I do computer contracting. And we signed a fixed price contract, and they just seem to forget things or ignore things or misunderstand things. And we are paying a construction company, a architect, and a project manager or construction management company. And they all miss these, this is just one of the many things they've missed. So again, nothing for the board to do tonight. I just will bring it up with the fire company, see what are different things. It seems weird that we're paying people all this money and they're like, ooh, who knew? Who knew there were rocks in the ground? That's the one.
Well,
That one just bugs me to know.
Alex, you have a lot of experience doing these large scale projects. How common are change orders?
I've never seen a project that didn't have it. Now, it doesn't mean that every project is gonna have changes to the electrical or the plumbing systems or gas systems or something, but this stuff happens, and like I was saying before with the water meter one, this is why you have a contingency budget. This type of stuff pops up frequently, and doesn't mean you just accept it, but sometimes like, Pico or the utility company, it's not like you can go to a competitor and get a, different power source or something. It has to be done, so that's what it's there for, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I'll just, this is purely heuristic, but from my own experience doing design defect cases, change orders happen all the time, these sorts of projects, so it's not unusual that they exist, but it is good to be scrutinizing them. So I think that's a good comment to make, Michael, and thanks for clarifying, Alex.
So next month's meeting, you'll likely have that one in front of you.
Great. Okay, any other board comment? Moving on to solid waste RFP.
Joe's gonna lead you through this one.
Thank you, Eric. So the current trash and recycling contract expires on September 30th of 2025. Last month, we discussed some of the changes we're anticipating or we want to see in the next contract, such as full automation. Currently, we have a recycling on automation, and we're looking to do that with the trash as well. And because of that, the bulk collection would change because they can't do the automation with bulk collection, so that will go through the company instead of being scheduled with us at this point. And we discussed a possible 3-year term with 2 options for a 4th and 5th year. And we're looking to issue the RFP in March and award it in May. Andy is here from Republic to do a quick presentation. If you want to start that now.
Sure, so I met with Don and Joe about a little over a month ago, probably a week before that meeting, to do my annual update on what's going on within the waste industry and within Republic. And some of the things that I talked about were actually for the last 2 years that I've been coming in here is about the path to automation. And we've been automated on recycling for years. That's the 65-gallon carts that we provide to all the residents. We want to do the same thing for trash, where it's a 95-gallon cart for trash. It's the standard size. If you drive around your township, a lot of people already have a similar type cart that they bought at Home Depot or Lowe's. So people already use those types of things. Those just aren't made to work with our automated trucks. So by us providing carts, we're in complete ownership of them. If one would blow out in the road on a windy day like today and a tractor trailer hits it, we're just gonna replace it. You don't have to go to Lowe's or Home Depot to buy another one. So if you could flip the slide for me. Just want to talk briefly about a couple of the things. And I already kind of talked about the lost lids, crack, residents having to go pick up things. You wouldn't have to do that anymore. We would just provide those. There are people that still just put out 4 bags at the side of the road. Windy days, we know what that can do too. We know the animals can dig in them. So by us providing carts, you get rid of that. Just makes everything look uniform and clean. But the real reason we're doing this as an industry is because it's hard to find people that want to hang on the back of a truck and pick up 10 to 12 tons of trash by hand a day. Because if I told any of you, you have to go to the gym every day this week and you gotta do curls and you gotta pick up 24,000 pounds of curls before you can go home, you'd kind of laugh at me. But here we want these people to do this as they jump off of the truck 800 times a day in whatever 25-degree weather like today with wind, and think, oh yeah, that makes sense. But that's really why it's hard to find people that do this. We have injuries all the time. People tear their rotator cuff. People get needle sticks grabbing a bag. They cut their leg with glass. And so it's really about employee safety. And then on top of that, this township is an awesome township. I'm from York, and I drove out here tonight. And it was kind of awesome driving through at night, seeing everything lit up. But what I do realize is it's curvy roads, it's hilly. And so when you're behind a truck putting bags in and somebody comes up over the hill, something bad can happen in a hurry. By going automated, we don't have to have people outside the truck. So it keeps our people safer and prevents any type of fatality from happening. When you flip the automation as well, what you also do is help reduce carbon footprint because the truck's gonna idle less. It pulls up, driver uses a joystick, the arm grabs it, dumps it, sets it right back down, and away we go. As opposed to You stop, the guy jumps off the truck, runs over, pulls 2 cans over, dumps them in, has to walk them back. Everything takes longer, so it's an environmentally good thing to do as well. You can put the next slide. So on the left is 65 gallon carts. That's what everybody has for recycling now that we've provided. In the middle is 95. That's standard for trash. That's what we would deliver to everybody. But we do have 65 gallon and we have even smaller 35 gallon. So if there's an older person that doesn't generate as much trash or just doesn't want to wheel the bigger cart, all they do is call us and say, this one's too big, and we bring out one of the small ones to them. So we do that to be flexible because we need to automate, and in order to, be able to work with everybody, we have to have different sizes because they're just, I have municipalities all over from here to Gettysburg, and there are some older people that live by themselves that just don't generate as much trash, and that 35 gallon cart's perfect for them. But it's also perfect for us because it's built to, withstand the claw dumping into the truck, and it keeps us safe. And the next one, you should be able to play that. So this is a video, we bought this company, oh, go back. Maybe hover, it should pop up some. Is this PowerPoint or?
This is the PowerPoint that I leaked out of the packet.
Okay.
So
I mean, it's PowerPoint, not PDF.
I don't think that I
Me too, I have one of the picture and there's a play button that pops up. It's not happening here.
Nope.
Okay, anyway, we don't need to show it. So in this video though, the helper literally jumps off the back of the truck and within 2 seconds, a distracted driver comes up and slams into the back of the truck. The video is very impactful. Luckily, it doesn't hit the employee because I wouldn't show that in a public meeting, but it makes you realize how quick these things can happen with distracted drivers today and curvy, hilly roads, these things can happen. Was there one last slide or was that it?
there's just the color.
So that's the main push for us is we want to get to automation. The other thing I wanted to share is our polymer center. So we opened our first one in Las Vegas last year, the second one in Indy this year. We're going to open one on the East Coast next year, and then the following year somewhere on the Gulf Coast of Texas. So most people don't realize this, but most plastic in this country gets downcycled and it's made into carpet or clothing or benches. At that point, when you rip that carpet up, it's not recyclable anymore. So companies like Coca-Cola and Nestle have come to us and said, we want to be more sustainable. We want to put more recycled material into our bottling. We need your help. So that's why we built these polymer centers. So now the bales of plastic would leave from our King of Prussia Recycling Center, go to the polymer center, break it into separate types of plastic, hot wash it, put it into flake. And then we have a company called Blue Polymer that we own that we mix the recycled flake with new resin, sell that to Coca-Cola. And if they want 50% recycled, we mix 50% with 50% new. They make a bottle, you buy your Coke, drink it, put it in your bin, and we get into this circular recycling. So that's kind of the push that's going on right now in the industry is to, like, people just think everything just gets made into a bottle again, but it's really not been the case. It's a lot of downcycling in this country. So I know sustainability and things are important here, and that's why I wanted to at least share some of the things we're investing in. I didn't put it in here, but we're investing in electric trucks as well. They're going to be coming down the road. We've got several fleets throughout the country that we're doing that, and it's working really well for us. But for us in this marketplace, it's all about the automation. So it's putting the carts in for trash, just like you have for recycling, and then we're good to go. Does anybody have any questions for me? It's kind of.
I do. Can you explain the bulk pickup situation?
Yeah,
A lot of
so-
people use bulk pickup. I know.
Well, when we use a rear load truck with somebody hanging on the back, they get out and the driver will hop out and the two of them will pick up the couch, throw it in the back, and then they compact it. When you use the automated truck with the arm, it dumps it up here kind of on the top or side of the truck. So you can't pick up a couch, throw it in there. So what we do is we just bring in a box truck that has a lift gate and they get out, they put it on the lift gate, put it up in the truck, and then they take it to the transfer station. So Residents will still get to have one bulk item per week as part of their deal. They just need to call us to say, I'm gonna put a couch out, and then we send the truck in and they go to the 12 people that called on Monday for their Tuesday pickup, and then we do it that way. So all of my municipalities in the rest of my market out in York, that's how we do it. We actually have an app and we have an online account that people can register for that we're gonna be adding bulk pickup to later this year as well. So they'll actually be able to just download an app and schedule it that way. So it's not that they're gonna have to pay additional to get done. They're just gonna call us to say, I'm gonna put a bulk out. And when you think about it, Eric, how many bulk items did you put out last year?
That's not my concern. My concern is how are residents gonna know that they need to call you to get bulk items when they didn't have to do that.
That's gonna come on our calendar that we prepare every year.
We'll get their bulk out. So a sizable number call anyway, just to say, hey, what do I do with this? But I'm confident that, we'll get their bulk out.
Yeah, well, whenever we start a new contract too, we send the mailer to all the residents to explain, here's the new contract, here's how the service is working, so we provide that as well.
So the driver in the automated truck is driving along and sees a bulk item, will he report it to you?
No, because we're gonna ask the residents to call us.
But what if they don't? It'll just sit there?
It probably would, yeah.
So we muddle through this stuff. So, if trash gets in the way of the street, we get it out. So there'll be some muddling through, but I think it will work.
It seems like it's a big deal, but like I put out one bulk item all of last year at my house. And I work for Republic Services, it picks up my trash, and I had to pre-schedule that to get done. Right, you put out 0 this year. The majority of people rarely ever put a bulk item out, so.
But we have 33,500 homes.
Right.
Somebody is.
Yeah, like when we build our price and we know that 5% of the residents a week are gonna put out a bulk item. Like, we don't build the pricing like, well, we're gonna pick up 3,500 bulk items every week. We know industry-wide, it's about 5% a week, so, it seems like this is horrible, they have to call or they have to go, but it takes, 2 minutes and you're done.
My concern, it's not that it's a big issue, it's just that you have to roll this out because like, there's a significant change, I think, from how people are just used to putting out trash, and that's my concern is that, and it's gonna be all on Don's shoulders to have to deal with because he's gonna get
So, and we
35
can,
calls.
we didn't talk about, but if we get to it, we can have the logistics and Joe and I, maybe the specs can be, initially it might just be somebody's here collecting bulk in the old fashioned manner. So there'll be some transition, we'll have to figure that one out. But I think it's doable, like I get a few calls a year from people just saying, hey, I'm gonna put something out, what do I do? They want a heads up on it, they wanna know when. We do a little bit of giving them a heads up, so they know that it's coming, sort of thing, so it'll be an extended version of that, I'm pretty confident we'll be able to do it.
And it's really, we communicate at the beginning of the contract, we're gonna send a mailer to each home. On top of that, when we deliver the carts, we tuck a flyer in the cart that explains, here's your cart, we provided it for free. If you want the smaller one, you call us, if it breaks, you call us, we replace it. And we can even put on there, when you need to put a bulk item out, call this number to schedule it. So we'll communicate as many ways as possible at the start of the contract for those changes.
Yeah, cause that's my only concern is because I just wanna make the rollout as smooth as possible, because I know what's gonna happen.
So the takeaway for us is to hear that and make sure that we're prepared for that.
Yeah.
So for Joe and I, it's been prepared that the spec facilitates it, and then whoever gets the contract, we have to be prepared to do that.
And I've done this 40 municipal contracts I handle, and my other business unit in York, we were pretty much all automated out there. So 2 years ago, we flipped from, we're just searching for bulk items to everybody had to pre-schedule. So I flipped them all within a couple month period. It was all communication, and now it's just what people do. They just know to
And
pre-schedule.
that's some of the reason why it's so early in the process, why we're doing it now, so that if it is awarded on the schedule we want, we have May, June, July, August, September for the message. There'll also be a message necessary for the cans themselves.
And as Don said, in developing the spec, ultimately, whether the winning bidder is Republic or somebody else, the spec will ultimately have the solid waste vendor be responsible. So there will be some interaction and duties of staff, but ultimately in the RFP, you want them to be responsible for figuring it out and for addressing problems, so. And we usually have an enforcement provision, so if week to week, month to month, something's not getting fixed, you have the ability to get compliance or have penalties as a part of the contract.
Are the smaller carts less expensive to have removed?
No, I mean, the township's gonna do the billing. We could certainly bid a lower price, but I don't know how you're
Yeah,
billing.
we skipped that one around and we're not charging you by bag now. So our thought was, the price would stay the same, all the cost is in the mobilization and the vehicle. And then we would just, we would be part of the facilitating of the can. If somebody wants a smaller can, we'll be part of getting them a smaller can. If somebody wants a bigger can, we'll be part of getting them a bigger can.
How does the claw grab? Is it the same as the recycling now where it's kind of like the horizontal claw, or is it the vertical claw where it does that and dumps it?
Horizontal, comes out, grabs it, dumps it this way. Yeah.
We bid it out. You guys win and start the contract in September. Will the automation start right then, or will it take a few months?
It probably will take a few months because we're gonna have to order another truck, and trucks don't come in 2 months anymore. If the township's ordered any dump trucks or.
Police cars, well, yes, it doesn't
So,
matter.
but this gives us the path to get there, because without the carts, we can't automate. So the carts are the path to automation, and then when the new truck comes in, then it's right out the street, so.
And that's gonna be up to you in the spec too, to say when, if that is from day one in the spec, or you allow a transition period, that can all be built into the spec. And any vendor is gonna have to comply with your spec.
Yeah, I mean, you're best to let it have like a year transition, because anybody, like any other haulers that need to buy the trucks, they're looking at 18 to 24 months usually for a truck to come in, so. Oftentimes, if you say it has to be day one, they're gonna put rental trucks in to get them through, which just jacks the rates. So,
Any other board comment? I'll make a motion to authorize township staff to prepare and advertise and accept bids for the upcoming solid waste contract. Do I have a second? Second. Any other board comment? Any public comment?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, Kara.
Hi, everyone. Kara Rash, Greenhouse Circle. I just wanted to ask if there was any consideration of adding a trash audit to the specs. Republic came and gave a presentation to the EAC last year and mentioned that a trash audit was available to their townships. And it would help us better determine where our contamination is in our recycling, and maybe help us better target residents and how to best recycle. Just wanted to see if that was a consideration for the specs. Thanks.
Oh, I don't know if you're putting anything about the specs. It's something we can do. We take the load to our recycling center, we dump it in a separate place and we can look through it. We're also adding AI to our trucks. We're adding cameras. They're gonna be able to take pictures of the contamination. And at that point, we'll be able to have pictures that we could literally send to a resident to say, you're putting this stuff in, this is not recyclable, you can't do that. So the technology is coming, because here's the thing, a lot of people do, they do wishful recycling. Like, oh, this nameplate is plastic, let me put that in. Well, that's not necessarily the type of plastic they want to recycle. So it's not that they're purposely trying, they're trying, so the more education we can do, the better. So even in our mailer, when we put it out, we're gonna have the yeses and nos for recycling, because people just want to recycle as much as possible. And they put things that shouldn't be in there. Number one contaminant at our recycling centers, anybody have a guess? Baby diapers. Used. That's crazy. I don't understand it either. There's some logo on these boxes that people think, oh, I can put it in there. So, yeah.
Okay, but to Kara's point though, the trash audit is something that we can
Yeah, so I
look
just
at,
think,
because I think I was there for that presentation.
yeah, so why don't I have a conversation with them? It might not be something that goes in the spec, it might just be an additional an item that you have, so why don't, let me talk to Andy about it and we'll brief you on that.
What about curbside, composting? Any movement on that?
There's no facilities that have been built. There's no legislation in the state pushing for that yet, so. We're doing it in other states where they've legislated that you have to. So we've actually built, composting facilities, we've built with, windrows, and we've built anaerobic digesters. We've done lots of things in other places where we have to by law. There's no law here yet. And without a place to dump it, like telling people to separate your food waste and put it in a bin, what are we gonna do? And that's just gonna increase the cost. So not here yet. But down the road, when the state legislature have to, we're gonna have to do that, so.
Do you think that'll really be the impetus of state legislation?
Because we all wanna do what's right, but there's a cost to everything, and if you have no place to dump this locally, and now we have to drive a truckload to like Lancaster, PA to dump this compost, it kind of offsets any environmental upside of recycling it, so. And then the cost, so.
Any other public comment? Yes.
Andrew Beaver, Ashby Road. You talked about the bulk pickup, Eric. I guess the other questions I have was, like, right now, I think we can have 8 trash cans in our capacity, which I think is like 16 tall garbage bags, and I saw on the spec the bin only owns like half that capacity. So for households that have larger families, is there an option to have more than one bin or a mix of different size bins? And then also, I think yard clippings are deemed trash, which I never understood in the first place, but like, is the composition of what can go in the bin gonna be different? As
When you
part
say
of
yard
the,
clippings, you mean grass?
yes,
Yeah, because the mulching facilities don't want the grass, so that's why grass is considered trash, but.
Yeah,
so it's just
So
the other things that,
the recycle list has been coordinated between Susan, Republic, and Joe to be contemporary, so we believe that, I don't know if they've made any changes to it, I don't recall, no, so. There is it's almost unlimited now. There'll be a can, the 95 can, there'll be a provision to purchase a second can at a discounted price is the way that I envision it happening at this point.
I also want to compliment your guys this morning, that our road's been blocked for 3 days and they actually backed up our road and got our trash on both ends. So they go above and beyond.
Good, yeah, I appreciate that. And that's part of why I think we'll get through the bulk pickup part, because they work with us to accomplish problems, to solve problems. So we'll figure out how to solve.
Additional public comment? Yes.
Libby Alfari, 1439 Sugartown Road. Just wanted to comment on the composting option. I hope we don't have to wait for the state legislature to make movement on composting. So that can be added to any of the other RFPs that are out to other companies. I think that's worth exploring.
Yeah, it could be
There may
added,
be an
it
additional
should be added as an
cost.
option.
I mean,
That
if
you could
residents
work.
want to pay for it, would that be an option?
Well, I think it'd be more a separate option. It's
Yeah.
not in the base rate, but here's what it would cost, and then the township could decide if they want to add that as an additional thing to it.
My advice would just be to do it outside of, they collect trash and recycling. Have them do what they do. If there's the movement to collect the food waste can be separate from the entity that's collecting the yard waste. We get somebody collecting it other than Radnor, and somebody collects it, and my wife signed up for a service, so presumably there's a service out there, just isn't a service that is provided by the major haulers. So, my advice would be that you pursue it if you decide that you want to pursue it, and then you take time to do it thoughtfully, and then you decide if you want to issue it.
Any other public comment? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you for your time. Thank you. I'm gonna drop back to York.
Moving on to item D, paving RFP.
Yeah, Joe's gonna lead you through that one also.
Thank you, Eric. Provided is a list of roads and a cost estimate and associated location map showing the streets recommended to be paved. These roads will be collectively part of the Township 2025 road program if approved. And bids will be received by the township via pen bid and presented to the board for consideration of award. So just consideration to authorize the township staff to prepare and advertise and eventually award.
Can you explain the process by which you selected these roads?
I
Or
drove
did-
around-
Or how
yeah.
you selected?
whether it's myself or any of our staff, Chuck or the sewer crew, they relay some problem areas. We receive some comments from residents, whether they're phone calls or emails, and I go and check them out. I drive around, a couple times a week, and I keep my eyes out for roads that look in poor shape. So there's various avenues of contact and inspections that take place to determine this. And I kept the list for this year. I started the list last February and worked on it throughout the year, kept it and went and re-inspected them. And then some of it comes down to the size of the roads and how it fits into the budget.
And what typically do you have to see before you recommend they be part of the road paving program?
So apparently, like most of the roads were paved at the same time, but depending on traffic, they wear quicker and depending on construction as well. Alligator cracking, potholes, sinkholes, construction that was done. Just like Bella Vista, there was a lot of construction on Bella Vista and half of the road was repaved and the other half is a disaster. So that was a no-brainer to do the other half. So it's pretty much paved within the same year as the other half was paved. That's one item there. And up on Dundee, half of the cul-de-sac was paved and half on the other one that goes up to Highland, I believe. And just to finish those roads, so they don't get out of order where half the road was done 10 years ago and now it's kind of a mix and match on condition and things that were recently done on the road.
You have a decent amount of, the cracking, the alligatoring of the surface, the loss of adhesion of the surface, so the top becomes gravelly. You have a decent amount of, edge deterioration. Those are probably the three biggest things that I see. Your horrific roads are repaired. I don't think you get to the point where you have enormous potholes because those are repaired with your repair contract. So this contract is mostly alligatoring, surface deterioration, edge deterioration with a sizable amount of follow-up. When Pico does a road, they do half. We'll often come in at the year later and do the other half to keep the road on a similar timing.
So this area back here is gonna be paved? It's on the list in brown.
It's on there as an alternate, just see how the bids come in.
As an alternate, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's because to pave it, you're gonna get economy of scale if you do it here. If we do it with our paving, or we put out a bid for it, we'll pay twice as much. You'll have to pay, you can't use liquid fuels funds to do this, so we'll get the price. If the price lends itself to using park funds, then we'll use it. If it doesn't, we'll go back to, but if this was a road, you would have paved it a long time ago. This is
Are we talking about the police parking area or are we
Just
talking about
parking
the,
area and around the back of Hilltop up to the other parking area.
the parking area for Hilltop or no?
From, not the parking space themselves, but where that brick comes in front of Hilltop, around the back, and then the police parking area. So.
Will this help with the slipperiness in the winter? It won't change.
I don't think it'll change that much.
Okay, because it won't change the level, it'll still have the same.
No, just
Profile.
repaving that paving that's problematic paving from
Right.
your roads. None of your roads are as bad as Betsy said. The hardest money to spend is the money we spend on ourselves, and that's good. So that's a little delayed. This is an attempt to see if this year is a good year to fix it. If the prices are good, you might be able to fix that relatively inexpensively.
Then there's one non-liquid fuels. Is that just trying to get as close as possible to making sure we use a
No,
budget?
this is, so this is fire department related, so the fire station is, they have to go out the back, they have to pave a private, they have to cut through a private road, and then they have to connect on Woodbine. And the price to do the restoration was enormous, such that 100%, so 100% of this is less than 30% of the price that you would have gotten if you had paved it as a, through the contract. So, we will pave it via this, it's your road. It's sort of what, Pico, we do the same thing in Berwyn, when Pico puts a pipe down the middle of those narrow roads, we make them go edge to edge. And then we'll just pave it with the, it'll be general funds, not liquid fuels funds.
Why can't we use liquid fuel for it?
Just too closely related to PennDOT saying, wait a minute, you know, the liquid fuels are not for you to build a fire station. They're for you to, and you see the amount is very, very small, $3,000. So, and you have $170,000 paving repair. So we'll use $3,000 from the paving repair. You would have paid $9,000 for just the trench, if you had done it through the contract. So, you're saving money, you're paying less, and you're getting 4 times as much paving out of it. So it's kind of a no-brainer. We'll see how the prices come in, and it's distinct so that, we can pay for it with a separate invoice to not run afoul of the liquid fuels audit.
One other follow-up question. The liquid fuels total, if I'm not mistaken, sometimes it comes in, it's slightly higher than it was budgeted for, so there might be, you know, sometimes you'll send us an email and say, hey, there's an extra $40,000 that was allocated or something like that. Do you then have like a backup list of a couple of the roads that you want to pave as well with that, or is that just kind of earmarked and rolled over into the next year?
It's been the latter lately. So the way we've done it is, the latter, it rolls over, and then this year, the liquid fuels allotment is 350,000. The paving is 415. So this year you're spending down some of the surpluses that have built up over the last couple of years. You got better pricing in liquid fuels than you anticipated, and your salt purchases were much less than you anticipated. So, traditionally, 3-4 years ago, you were $200,000 a year. So this is double what you were 5 years ago. Just trying to spend down that fund balance in liquid fuels.
So that's on spending. How about the revenue that comes in from liquid fuels? How does that compare? Is it kind of all over the map, like year by year, it's up, it's down, or is it like trending down?
Solidly consistent in the 350s or so.
Yes.
My concern would be the impact of, you know, widely deployed electric cars kind of impacting the amount of, you know, gas purchased and then tax receipts decreasing. So seeing that kind of trail off would directly impact our ability to pave roads.
Not seeing that yet, so it's increasing marginally each year by, you know, a handful of tens of thousands, by less than a handful, you know. That's
And I think the legislature and the transportation management groups statewide and regionally, they're looking at that very carefully already. There are some ideas to think about miles actually driven.
Per mile taxes.
Right,
Yeah.
versus, just based on the fuel, yeah. Because I think they're uniformly agreeing that at some point the fuel use will go down.
Yeah.
The question of when that will happen.
Great. One other question, sorry, I got so many about this. Previously, I think you would use some liquid fuels funds for sidewalk projects, not that you were paving sidewalks, but a lot of like intersection type of stuff that was still credibly considered roadway and intersection type work was done as part of that. Did you guys evaluate any of that? I mean, I know this is road paving, but is there an opportunity for that?
None of that is, there's no curbs and sidewalks.
Strictly paving.
And we just haven't gotten to the point where we've identified that and evaluated it. And in the communications with PennDOT, they wanted advance notice on those sort of things. Because we want to, before we use the money, we got to make sure that it's, so our our eye and ear is out for that, and that's a way that you can spend down your liquid fuels fund. Right now, it's just paving, salt, and
Electric.
Yeah, so, and the
Street and
liquid,
traffic light electric.
the liquid fuels audit took an hour and a half, and or took not that long because you are following the pretty standard protocol.
That's great, and I'm fine with this, but I would like if you guys would at least evaluate it for the following year to see what kind of opportunities there were, because I think we did it either a year or 2 years ago, and I think it was useful to be able to kind of use these funds for earmark for that for a, intersection type of, it's like ADA accessibility.
So
curbs and
John's
sidewalks.
kind of doing that with, he's doing that, and it seems to be hyper particular, so
Yeah.
yes, we got to explore that more, that's a good way to use your liquid fuels funds.
Thank you.
Any more comment? I'll make a motion to authorize township staff to prepare, advertise, and accept bids in order to implement the township's 2025 road program. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any other board comment? Any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, moving on to the next item, the 670 Leopard Road waiver.
I'll just sort of tee it up and I'll let you know who you have on available to you to answer some questions. So Colleen can talk about any aspect of the land development. You've got Brady online. He can talk about any of the engineering aspects of it. I think it's as simple as you have, your ordinance is more stringent than the county. There's a distance waiver that's been requested. And you did something similar with sewer before. I don't recall if this is one that you've done before. So Colleen and Brady can answer any question you have about it if you have a question.
Couple of questions. It's just changing the setback, there's no, but they can still fully stormwater managed, right?
I think that one would be for Brady.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
It's just changing the setback, it's this full stormwater management that it would otherwise have. It's not like.
Yes, it's a waiver strictly of a setback requirement between the on-site proposed infiltration facility and the on-site well. The normal separation distance is 100 feet. In this case, they can't achieve it. It's a tight site. So they're affecting, in theory, only their own well. So you should note that the health department requires only a 25-foot setback from a well to an infiltration facility. So they're meeting the county health department requirement. So our office has reviewed it. We see no issues with it, and we suggest the motion that's listed in our February 11th memo.
Should we consider changing our setback since this seems to be a problem?
You can't do that because it's a Act 167 model ordinance. You can make the ordinance more strict. You can't make it any less strict.
Oh, so the Act 170, the model ordinance says 100 feet. It's not-
Correct. Correct. And then the county, who also prepared the model ordinance, its own health department only has a 25-foot requirement from wells when people apply for well permits.
The county is currently in disagreement with itself.
Yes,
That's
yes.
basically. It's
Hey, but 100 feet sounds like on a 75-foot frontage property, how do you fit 100 feet? It just seems large.
And are there any legal risks associated with approving this
Yeah.
waiver?
This waiver request in no way, shape, or form pertains to the amount of runoff leaving the site.
Yeah, I think they're meeting all of the stormwater standards. It's really, if there is any risk, it's the property owner's own risk, but the health department says that's within the parameters, so I think you're okay. I do think you're doing it the right way, that it's always case by case, and an engineer analyzes it first.
Should we require any separation, like a film or a wall to keep them separate since they're gonna be closer than we think they should be?
There is a house in between.
But the house doesn't go down into the ground, so the water can still travel.
It can, yes, it can. In theory, they could be, if there's gonna be any contamination, it would be only to their own well. I doubt that's gonna happen for an on-site facility like this in a residential neighborhood. There's not really much in the way of room for contamination.
The stormwater doesn't seem I remember when we did something like this for a sewage connection or something, and we required them to build a wall between them. Some sort of separation, I don't remember when.
Yeah, there have been waivers in the past where a coating was put on the outside of a wall, an underground wall, when the infiltration facility was in too close of a proximity relative to the setback. I'm not sure we can have them apply anything though to an existing well.
Any board questions? I'll make a motion to approve the waiver. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. Moving on to 113-604 Lancaster Avenue resolution.
Yeah, so you have the same team available. It's a perfunctory administrative item, part of the planning module for the regular part of the process. So Colleen can answer any questions, or you could answer any questions.
Is this a change from 2 to 3 or a change from 2 to 5? Wasn't clear.
It's a change from 2 to 5. At last Tuesday night's authority meeting, the authority granted the 3 additional EDUs.
And there's enough EDU capacity?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yes. I keep hearing we're close to running out or not, are we?
Yeah, we have a finite number, but he's diligently tracking the number, and
Do we know what it is right now? Like, are there 10 or 100 left?
I think in Berwyn, we're somewhere around 40.
yeah, so there's a tangible, specific number
Right,
that
right,
is, it's a book entry number. It doesn't correlate to a physical capacity of a pipe.
Right.
But we have, that's the capacity that we are taking. We share, every one of these goes through the EMA, the spreadsheet that memorializes that as part of it. So when we get to that point, somebody's gonna have to figure out what to do, but we're not at that point.
Right. Are we still constrained by DEP?
Yes, you're in the Berwyn area, you're in a cap. The other areas are outside of it.
Do we have to apply to get out of that, or will it just?
Yes.
Okay. I'm wondering when, but that's.
Yeah, the determination was that we had to have better control of the INI before we took the request in.
How many EDUs do we eat up per year for Berwyn, for instance? Probably less than 10.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
about,
like
yeah,
that.
so you're probably 10 to 20 in the whole township, if that.
Any other board comment or questions? Make a motion to adopt the resolution 2025-7 for plan revision. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor of approving motion, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Okay, moving on to Hilltop House catering lease renewal.
Yeah, I'm gonna let John handle this one.
Sure, so for the last few months, in discussion with your current caterer at the Hilltop House, Perfect Settings located from Berwyn. They've in the attached memo, you have their proposed rental agreement numbers for 2026. It's always 1 year in advance, as they should be booking 2026 for weddings now. So this is the number that they came back. It's purely up to, this is a professional services contract, sort of, so it's purely up to the board whether you feel that this number is an appropriate number for rental services. Yeah, in the attached memo, Jerry provided some feedback or hard numbers in terms of what they've been doing, how many events and what they've been seeing in terms of costs and revenues. So the proposed number brings it down to the 54,000 a year rental contract, paid monthly for 2026. And that would be a deduction or a reduction of $12,000 a month less than currently.
So a little background, you, probably 6-7 years ago, a joint group from ECAC, Park and Rec, I don't recall if the Board of Supervisors had someone on it, they made a recommendation to operate it in this manner. So you used to operate it with a part-time employee who scheduled things and managed the website and advertised. You switched to this form for steady, reliable rent, which 72,000. It has been diminished through agreement each year down to 54. The caterer is asking to reduce it to 54 this year. So, your options are, you can accept that. It's gonna be very difficult for you we're just not outfitted to run a catering facility. I don't be very surprised if we could clear $54,000 from running it. Option B is you could rebid it. You could go back to, just go out to bid again with the same form. And then you always have the option of picking an alternative form. That would probably not happen quickly. So the first one is a immediate option. You could decide that tonight and we would implement it. The rebidding it would be a little more timely. You don't know what you're gonna get. You didn't get a lot of bids last time. So I'm not certain. Yeah, and nothing's changed on our end. The attributes that led you to this form are unchanged. It doesn't mean that you value them the same as the other group, but there were attributes at play that lent themselves to this form. So it's really open for you. It's discretionary. You have the choice.
Well, it looks like we're getting diminishing returns here on our current situation. So I'm wondering if it makes sense to kick it over to ECAC again.
But this is what they're making, we're making them. Right, isn't the rental fee collected 61,000, rent paid to township, that's from perfect settings viewpoint, not our.
Yeah, I don't know, so on our end, we got 72,000 in year one of this, and we're at 66,000 now, and they're asking it to go down again. So the township is receiving less.
But how much are we spending?
We're probably spending close to the amount that we're getting, but that was the case before. There's nothing,
Right.
it's very easy for us. Our repairs are AC and plumbing and a little thing here and there. You're probably a little more than breaking even or breaking even. It's not costing you money.
But if they're losing money, why do they want to keep doing it?
I'm not sure, we're just the landlord, so,
We didn't ask.
yeah.
Because my guess would be the rental fees collected is not all encompassing of the total fees that they
Right.
receive.
Right.
And I wouldn't even entertain that, yours is, you're the landlord, is it worth your while for 54,000 a year?
The only caveat I'd add in is that if you're, any considerations for potential renovations of this building might impact the attractiveness of that as a rental facility
Yeah.
during that tenure. So if you were to consider doing a full RFP again, it might be good to first settle whether you want to do renovations here, as heavy construction here wouldn't be a great backdrop for a bridal shoot.
Yeah, and as I recall, that's been an ongoing issue with the company because there have been circumstances where the facilities have not been up to their liking. And so I think, at least from my perspective, I'm wondering if it just makes sense to have ECAC just take another look at it, just generally to see if they still make the same recommendation while still moving forward as with this plan, because it's in line with what we've already arranged. And I'd like to see some analysis before making a decision to, do any sort of change to our current arrangement, but I'm happy to hear what other people think.
I'm curious why the number of events has decreased each year. Is it a drop in demand? Is it their ability to deliver that many events? Do we know?
No, I think you need to hear that from him. I could speculate, but it's probably better for you to hear it from him.
He does mention that in his write-up that it's just, some of it is just a size number, a number of guests issue where it is a niche location for a constrained number of guests.
And that was a purposeful choice made 6 years ago, that you didn't want it to be you didn't want to have 250 people there 3 days a week. At the time, you were having some noise issues with Waynesboro, and you didn't want to recreate that. So you made the choice to have it operated as a little sort of a niche-like venue. Now, that's a sizable amount of why the bookings are relatively modest. It was purposeful and intentional, not an unintended consequence.
Did we get any complaints about the events?
No, we no complaints. It's all easy, all pretty easy. And then we're not involved in it. We're not setting up the website. We're not figuring out whether previously you were deciding which magazines to advertise in. So no one here is deciding. All of that is on the vendor. That was the choice you made. It's all the risk is on the vendor. They're paying you a set fee. They have the risk of making it efficient.
So theoretically, we could let them go a little larger so they could make more money, so they could pay us more rent.
Yes.
Because we don't know how much bigger we can go and not get complaints, but we can go a little bit bigger and see.
When I believe in the proposals that you got when you put out the RFP last time, there was comments from some of the caterers about it was sort of a hypothetical. If you allow us to put in a tent off the back, we'd be able to sit 200 people in a single room, and then you would, but that would be, similar to what your arrangement at Waynesboro, where you have a very large tented structure. That's the sort of proposal that would facilitate a large, the single room is what they're looking for, where you have.
That's a common theme from Jerry, that a single tent net, and then you expressly forbid the tent in the back because this is an amphitheater. So if you're blaring wedding music, you'll have the music throughout the neighborhood. So
I wouldn't support a permanent tent, but like a Waynesboro, I'm not a fan of that, but probably be okay with temporary tent.
yeah, so they can put temporary tents up. That's all in your agreement. They just have to put it in the front.
Okay.
Okay. And the logic of that is that the front is more amenable to, there's less victims of the noise.
Have they ever done that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So if you are running up against time constraints, meaning if you spend 6 months or so, or 4 months with ECAC, I don't know what Jerry will do as far as 2026. Maybe he'll just lose interest and stop booking it.
Right. Well, the idea wasn't to do one or the other. The idea was to proceed as normal.
So renew it at what rate that you decide, and then recommission ECAC to evaluate the issue again.
Yeah, just to ensure we're not, losing anything in that, just kind of it's easy to kind of just do the same thing over and over again. It'd be nice to have someone take it, I know it's only maybe 6 years ago, which is kind of an eternity ago. So like, maybe it's probably worth taking a look at again. But I think proceeding in this manner is acceptable.
Yeah, so you'd really be making a recommendation for 2027, looking at it now and advising if this is the best way to operate it in 2027.
Right.
And this would just be for 1 year.
But every year you renew for 1 year. So
I thought originally we did 3 years.
Yes, you've been renewing annually. Some of this is because that building is also one of your principal components of if you upgrade this building using that, so that was another reason for the formula you picked. So the pattern we're in is circa September. I know that it's February, but we've been at this since September with them. We're trying to get them to initiate the renewal 15 months in advance. This one will just be 10 months in advance.
And their proposal also says that if they exceeded the 54,000, they're willing to talk about how to deal with that, and you could. So for 2026 only, which I think is and then plus the ECAC review, for 2026 only, you could say 54,000, but if the total rental fees in 2026 exceed 54,000, then X, whatever that is, do you split it 50-50? Does the township get it? You could leave it as a meet and discuss if you wanted, in an amendment that names that amount, that if they exceed that, you'll discuss in good faith how to divide those proceeds. Something like that.
That makes sense to me. Okay.
Then if they have a great year, you're not.
And you'll just leave it up to John. We'll negotiate that. Hope the spirit of what you just identified, he'll figure out how to codify that.
Right. But you'd like to capture some upside if they exceed the 54,000.
Right. Okay. So is where I think it's gonna go, that the three things that would come out of it, one would be to proceed at the rate identified, have language to capture that upside in the way that Andy described, and identify this as a project for ECAC to evaluate if this is the right mechanism to operate the building circa 2027 and beyond.
I disagree. I would rather stick with the current rate that we have here. I mean, just looking at the number that we have, see for the last 3 years, 22, 23, 24, 72,000 paid to us, 52,900 paid to us. I'm sorry, 72 paid to us, 65 paid to us, 66 paid to us. So if we drop this to, what was it, 54, 56? I mean, it's $20,000 less than the rent that we were getting in 2022. Seems unusual that our rent is dropping for 3 or 4 consecutive years when the rent everywhere else literally is increasing every year. So this seems odd to me, and I disagree with dropping it. I'd rather keep it the same.
If you decide to keep it the same, and if Jerry decides to not renew, then all it does is it answers your question for you about your going out to bid or coming up with an alternative. Yeah, so it's not
it's a risk.
Yes, that's, I'm not expressing it as a catastrophic risk. I'm expressing it as it's not the end of the world risk. If you decide that you don't want to reduce the rent and it should stay at 66, it is not a catastrophe if Jerry walks away. It's either rebid or you reevaluate the whole use of it altogether.
I would agree.
What about negotiating maybe a $60,000 instead of going down to 54, splitting the difference?
It's probably pretty prudent, pretty easy to ask. We can,
Seems like $12,000 less is significant, 6,000 is probably livable.
I mean, we've got Stacy in here. Stacy, rents are going down for 3 straight
I'm dying
years.
for public comment, because I can tell you, obviously in my prior life, I was a florist and I had my wedding at the Hilltop House. I can tell you that in the last 5 to 6 years, there are a lot of new venues that are in the area that are shiny and new. If, I would agree with Susan, if you can come to a compromise between what you had before and what they're asking for, that's probably fair for the township, but I definitely would reevaluate it. Hilltop House is an older house. It probably needs a lot, if you put it out to bid to other vendors to be caterers there, my guess is there's gonna be a litany of lists of things that need to get done there to make it nicer, better, and more, if you will, to attract weddings there. Limitations on size is definitely an issue on Hilltop House, because I know if you're having standing cocktails, it's like 160 to 170 people. If you're having a sit-down dinner, it's like ideal for 100, which is kind of small
nowadays, people are doing larger weddings again. But are rental rates going down? No, but I think this has other conditions that I think are a little difficult. Right now, it doesn't cost you a lot as far as the maintenance and things like that. But if you get a new person in there, you're gonna have to throw in a lot more money to get them to, and then just what Don said,
Yeah.
how much do you want the space to get used? Which I think when I was on ECAC, when they were bidding it out originally, and they didn't want it to become a giant wedding venue that had 3 events a week and had a noise problem.
Yeah, and I'll say, at least from my recollection, last time we had the renewal, the catering company is pretty, like, they'll work with us, given our, like, the structural issues with the building and, like, other problems we've had with the building. They seem to at least be, like, willing to work with the township on certain issues.
Yeah,
A new caterer may not.
And it has a scale that is it has a civic mission, meaning it's if you're having a 300-person wedding, it's probably not the venue. But if you're having a small little gathering, it lends itself to that. So you just have to decide, there's no right or wrong answer. The economic part of it was considered, and I was on the group, so I'm going from memory, but it didn't seem likely that you were going to be able to have enough weddings to justify a whole bunch of money. And in order to do it, you got to put the tent out. Anybody who's gonna make money off of it is gonna need the tent in the back. And you're gonna be like Waynesboro, where you have a Friday, Saturday, and a Sunday, pretty much from April through October. So you'll have to be comfortable with that tempo. The previous group was not comfortable with that tempo.
Yeah, because you're in the middle of a residential area, that's another consideration, I think, for that. Okay, so it seemed like we had some interest in trying to push back and see if they'll come up. Is that the?
Negotiate.
Susan wants to negotiate, okay. I mean, I have no problem with negotiating if that's where everyone's headed. And there's no harm in it. It turns around and says, no, we understand where we sit with things.
Right, and I said, they've been a good tenant. I'd say, let's just go with it as it is. I don't feel the need to negotiate it $6,000 here or there in this case. But if everybody else does,
I think that's just tell us what to do at this point. I think we've narrowed it down to, like, you're aware of the limitations of your choices, the strengths of your choices.
Sean, do you have any strong feelings? Looks like we're.
I don't have a problem with negotiating, but I do agree with Michael as well. Like, if they've been a good tenant, I'd like to see what we do this year. And if it turns out like, yeah, maybe we look at the following year and evaluate it based on that. If we're in, like Don's saying, we're in a bit of a crunch. But I'm not, either way, I'm not opposed either way.
Is that clear enough for you, Don?
Yes. Okay, how about this? How about, we just say, hey, the board said fine, 60 grand. If Jerry says no, then I'll let you know that Jerry said no, it can't, or it's either 60 is just like the compromise point that you identified. Does that sound, you have to make it tangible. It has to be a tangible takeaway, so. It's either that or accepted at the 54.
I agree with Michael. It's just it's a few $1,000s. Is it really that like big of a deal to the township?
It's $12,000 less than last year.
9,000.
9,000?
Yeah, so this year is 63,000. The 2025 rate is 63,000 for the year. The proposed 2026 rate is 54.
Okay.
I just don't trust the numbers that they put in here. Their shortfall in 22 is 10,000, the shortfall in 23 is 12,000, the shortfall in 24 is 23,000. We would very much love to redo this for another year. It doesn't make any sense. So
And
clearly,
Right,
they're
and
making
that's
plenty of other.
sort of, that's what I'm saying is that, like, you're not, if I were you, I wouldn't look at it from the perspective of a caterer, I would look at it from the perspective of a landlord. Are you in a position, can you make more with some other mechanism? And that I'm not really too sure of.
The one data point though is that they've gone from 34 events to 19 events. From 22 to 24. Although it looks like they're doing, I don't know much about the booking season, but they have 13 already this year. Seems pretty positive.
Yeah, for 22 is 1,800 per event, if you do the math. 23 is 2,300 per event. 24 is about 2,200 per event, so it's about the same for the last 2 years. It just, I mean, my opinion is I'd rather just keep collecting the same rent or kill the whole thing altogether, and then we can figure out what to do with the space when we look at the township building. So if you guys want to, drop it and accommodate or negotiate, it's fine. I see it as keep doing this agreement until we decide to do otherwise.
All right, it just has to be 3 of you, unfortunately.
I think I'm hearing 2, 2, and 1.
Wait, Alex, what's your
No
proposal?
action just means nothing happens, so.
But if the direction is to go back up to 60, but that the township would share the upside through the 66,000, then you kind of have the best of both worlds again.
Yeah.
The $6,000 break, but if he does better, you're gonna get something from it.
But we don't audit their fees. It's just whatever they're telling us their rental fees are.
That's true.
But that, you can make up whatever they
Totally
want.
subjective.
You need to sit down with him. He's probably not doing that. In fact, he's definitely not doing that.
But then why would they want to renew if he's losing $24,000 a year?
That was my original question.
Because they're making money in the catering.
Exactly.
I mean, that's
Oh, so-
not the issue.
So I think.
Alex, what is your proposal? I just wanted to hear what you were saying.
Stick with the same rent that we have right now, $66,000, the same number. They're gonna pull in the same business they did the last 2 years, pay the same fees they did right now. Same thing. I don't know why we would drop it.
I can go with that. 2.
All right, I'll
Do I hear
go
three?
along with you. I'll be a third.
Okay.
I think it's reasonable and, we can, I guess we'll get an answer.
Yeah,
In
so
terms of where he's
it'll be the same rent, 63, not 66, but it'll be the same rent. And you still want us to initiate that ECAP assignment presumably.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty idea.
All right, and then Andy, some kind of mechanism, it is part of the agreement that they renew this in September, it says so.
Yes, I think the mechanism would be, you come back with the result and do a 1-page addendum for the board to act upon
Very good,
the final bill,
okay.
if that makes sense.
And again, he's worked with us throughout. I just think that, it's a shame that we're doing this to him, but we'll see what he does.
Very good.
Any other board comment or public comment?
I do have one other question.
Sure.
Are you saying that he does not have to renew the lease until September?
No, he's late on renewing.
No, it's late on right now, so we're trying to redo.
Oh, you're saying
15
from last
months and-
September?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm sorry.
the agreement specifies the burden on him to initiate the renewal.
Okay,
And it's been, we did our part trying to get it to you in September, it's just taking that long.
okay.
So you have an agreement signed through the end of this year, what would happen next year?
All right, moving on to departmental reports. Is there anything that anyone wanted to pull out or discuss? Hey,
Yeah, I do want to share, in,
Salt.
well, the salt, the salt, we're having trouble getting salt. We're at about 40% capacity, which we don't want to be. We've decided to sit tight, so we think, the 10-day forecast is good. We think it's coming. If I have to purchase salt outside of CoStar's, we'll purchase it, but we don't think we have to at this point. And then, Colleen she put in her report about the sidewalk, so you would ask for sidewalk priorities. And, her report talks that the planning commission did recommend a grant for a sidewalk on Conestoga and a sidewalk here at Newtown. Those were all budgeted, and part of your budget discussion, there's money but in the 2005 budget. So it's my expectation that you want us to proceed on that's not, there's no more analysis, that those are both proceed items. Is that your understanding also?
Say that again.
There's money in the budget to pursue a grant for the sidewalk on Newtown, the crossing on Newtown, that's here at the park. And then a sidewalk on Conestoga, the northern part of the township.
Right.
So that was,
Yeah.
the PC made both those recommendations, they were part of the recommendations in the fall. You have money budgeted specifically available for that in the budget that you approved. So our intention is to proceed starting tomorrow. Colleen is going to initiate those two projects.
Great.
I have one quick update on the snow removal budget. We are around 47% of the way through the budget and around 65% of the way through the winter season, so we are okay from that standpoint.
Great. Moving on to, unless there's anything else.
Yeah, Eric, I got one question.
Sure.
Concerning Colleen's. Don, and I know you and I have been sharing some information about this as well. On the Waterloo the Waterloo Road, what research does the township, like, I know you had mentioned this is kind of new for us, but I just was curious as to like, what does the township have to look into, or have we looked into it?
Yeah, a little bit of both. So this is the Waterloo Circle item that Gretchen is here about. The HOA is asking that you take dedication of Waterloo Circle. It's traditionally you take dedication at the end of a subdivision process. In my time, I haven't seen you take dedication of a street not part of a subdivision process. There was one attempt a couple of years back and it was politely declined. It would have a decent amount of legal work, a decent amount of engineering work to identify the details to protect your interests. Probably the first thing that today we looked at the approval plan, and the plan specifically says that the HOA will maintain the street in perpetuity. So it was not an oversight on the part of someone. It was purposeful that the street would be maintained by the HOA. So if you're the sovereign, if you want to take it, you can. Our advice on the staff side is you got a decent amount of engineering work, a little bit of legal work that you gotta go through to verify that you're not taking some risks. You could pass that burden on to the HOA. The HOA you could ask them to do the legal work, for them to do the engineering work, and then come back to you and make the case to you. Or you could politely decline and just say, this isn't something we traditionally do. We're not interested in pursuing it. So Andy, anything to add? I'm trying to summarize a complex process in just a couple of sentences.
Yeah, only that I always start out with, what do the original development plan documents say, so you can, sometimes there's an offer of dedication, sometimes there's an intent to dedicate, sometimes it's clear that it's a private road and it's going to be HOA owned and maintained. And as I understand it from the 2003 development file that Colleen went through, it's clear that the street is designated to be private and it's got perpetual maintenance by the HOA. So that means unless the board wants to change its mind about that, that was the recorded plan and the decision in 2003 when it was approved.
As I understand it, it's intended to be private. it can be built to different standards and it's intended to be dedicated, in which case it would have to be built to the standards that we have.
Yeah, I think in a modern subdivision, you often require the public like standards anyway, but when I have seen an older road accepted for dedication, if there's a health and safety reason or some other reason you want to do it, a lot of times the condition would be the HOA and its owners have to upgrade it to the modern standard if you're gonna take it. And that's not an unusual precondition if you were interested.
And we don't, no one's examined it, nobody knows what the profile is, nobody knows what it looks outwardly like a traditional suburban road to me.
And I'll just, can I make a comment?
I guess we may as well do this now. Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay. I will just say that it's not a gated road, right? It's not that we're putting private road, private property signs out. We get a lot of influx of walkers. There's no real sidewalk where we're at, so you can, but it's highly residential. So we'll have people in through the circle all the time. We have offshoot parking for the residents that live around us, because again, on Waterloo, there's no place. We're never out there saying, don't come in. Whether it's road construction, we have the trucks parking on the circle. Whether, town cops pulling speeders off Waterloo Avenue, they're in the circle pulling people over. And so I think what, I didn't know what was written in the original documents. I've only lived there 3 years, but, the intention is to formalize what I think most people that know the road asking to formalize how people think of the road, right? People think of it as a township road and not a private property. As Don mentioned, it's a high quality road. The initial bar that was set to us was, does it comply with the liquid fuel standard? It does. It's a paved road. I mean, in Don's words, it's not an English countryside road. Fully curbed. And it's 250, 300 feet. It's also not excessive.
And do you speak for the HOA or you?
I do.
Okay, you're the point person?
Delegation,
Okay.
right, delegated with this
I'm
task.
just kind of curious as to why now the HOA has decided to approach the township.
I think the homes have recently turned over and no one actually has had the history. And so I think we are, like in my own words, formalizing what we think is a general sense of what it is. A town road.
It looks more like a township road than most of your other private roads. Not that that helps.
Does the road drain into that retention basin in the back?
Yes.
Wings Bridge or wherever it is, on the 252, that was like township road.
Yeah, and you have 5, 6 township roads, you have communities, 4 or 5 of them, so you have thousands of other people that live in the scenario like this. One of the items that came up was, taxes, so there are taxes that go to roads, but a sizable amount of the road work is done by liquid fuels, which doesn't come from taxes. So there are, none of the money for the paving that we were talking about comes from taxes.
And I can't speak for the other subdivisions, but ours is very open to Waterloo Avenue. So, it doesn't feel like a suburban enclosed subdivision, a closed off, enclave. It feels, an entry point to a main road. We're right near Sugartown.
One of the, you're the sovereign, you tell us what to do and we do it. But it isn't just a little task. It isn't like fill out the form and put it before us at the next meeting and I think to protect you, it's an endeavor. It will cost somebody what could be modest sums of money. You gotta decide whether you want that. You gotta maybe, I don't know if the HOA would accept the burden of that. I don't know if it's worth their while to invest a handful of tens of thousands to convince you that it's a good idea.
Is it 5 homes?
7.
I mean,
Then there's open space around it, right?
Mhm.
Would that come with the road or would the open space stay with the HOA?
We could maintain, I mean, I don't think you wanna assume the mowing bill, right? I mean, we hadn't contemplated giving you, if that's you want a package deal, I mean, we could take that back to the HOA and talk about it,
you know,
if
Michael, these
we're
are-
dealing
this is
here.
Some of the, no one's looked at the zoning, no one's looked at to know whether the, the zoning might require the, open space to, so there's a decent amount of legal work, engineering work, planning and zoning work that would have to go into this.
And what happens if we don't do it? I mean, nothing changes.
It
right?
just stays as a private road.
It's consistent with the plan as approved.
Do you think the homeowners would be interested in paying a lot of money to do that? Would it be worth it to them?
I don't think we would be interested if there's not an indication that upon, I think we would want to know what we need to prove, right? What is the bar for entry on this? I mean, just undergoing engineering with no commitment on the other side from the town probably is not in our best interest.
And we can't quantify it, so it's very very, that's sensible. It's difficult for us to quantify what the bar is, because it's an unusual circumstance. So we don't know whether that would be tens of thousands or a handful of thousands of dollars. Like even the, Michael, you mentioned the, transferring the open space, that's a legal agreement that takes decent amount of engineering work, or legal, lawyers, engineers, so there's.
Yeah, what is the Sharps Woods probably took 8 months. And that was for an audit.
Yes, yeah. So you know the complexity of it, and we do what you tell us to do, and I think you see that it is a bit more complex than it might have been thought to be originally.
Right.
And I think, Gretchen, even in fairness, I think when you presented it, you weren't sure, and you see the complexity of it now, that it has complexity.
I do, I also, go back to my other point that I do feel like this is, we live in the township. I understand what was written originally, but I do think it's, in your own words, we're neighbors, right? And I think this is what some sort of, responsibility that the township provides to homeowners.
But when this was originally agreed, I don't know if, what was this, 2003, if there was some sort of concession that was given to density or home construction or setbacks or anything like that, okay, we'd be willing to grant an exception if, the homeowners association will take over ownership of the road and provide that. So it's difficult for me to say, to grant this request and take over, assume the road, when, the original agreement had it, this was an HOA road, or possibly some exchange in that agreement. And then, we would then walk that back. I mean, I'd be in favor of just leaving it one of those days. I don't know about the rest of you guys.
Yeah, I don't know, I mean, I don't. I'm not sure why we would change it, like, I don't understand what the benefit would be. What's that oil company, Mac Oil, right? They're not dedicating their roads, right? And they're getting.
Some of that is dedicated, they have a
Right.
cul-de-sac, those are public, but the majority of them are not dedicated.
Not dedicated, and they're building them differently than if they were dedicating them, they would have to
Correct.
build them differently, right?
Yeah.
So I'm worried, like you are, that there was some agreement like
And that's
that.
one of the things that I identified, if you do this, somebody has to look at that to make sure that there isn't a condition that would be violated if ownership is transferred.
Or we create precedents and it happens again and again.
Yeah, Don, the only thing I would see is also maybe just providing them with what would they have to do. I mean, there's no harm in that. I'm not saying I disagree with anyone on the board. I just think, hey, in good faith, this is what you would have to do in order to prove to us that this road should be dedicated as a township road.
I can inform the technical aspects of it, but what they would have to do is convince you, it's the five of you it's a policy choice for you, not a staff choice for me.
Right.
So, I can give them the sort of the technical hurdles and itemize them. But ultimately, they have to convince you that it's a good idea, three of you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Alex and Michael here, but I wouldn't want to foreclose the possibility if whatever those technical hurdles are and the HOA is able to make a showing that this is in fact a legitimate move and are willing to bear the cost of that and show it to us. I mean, we certainly entertain it. Obviously, we can't guarantee any sort of result or, outcome. Like that's, it sounds like this is a very complex issue and there are a lot of different issues at stake in terms of trying to, I guess, adopt the road or so whatever the term of art is. But I'm not seeing the exigency here needing to do this and why it is that we would need to do this right now. Aside from being part of the township, I don't see that the HOA having a private road doesn't make it not part of the township. So that's just kind of my thoughts. I'm just thinking out loud here. I don't, this isn't, we just talked about, I got your email yesterday. I didn't get to read it until today. So, I mean, I don't.
And in the email, I was hoping that we didn't get bogged down in the past. Like, I mean, honestly, we didn't have the information of the perpetuity that Don pulled out today. But I do hope that we are forward thinking and just saying that if it qualifies as a road today in the standards that we meet, that it is a possibility. I mean, and I think the initial bar was liquid fuel standards, easily met. If the next is the quality of the road or the materials in which it's made, we can investigate that as well.
I think the other issues that Alex and Michael identified are also kind of valid too, whatever the HOA got in exchange for being a private road, I think is something significant that the township has to consider and what you're proposing, so.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been like the by right, ability was to build 4 houses on here, and instead they wanted to build 7, and in exchange the township got, this would be a private HOA road, so the township didn't have to then do the maintenance and stuff on. I don't know, but something like that, would certainly be possible.
And usually a developer makes that call.
Right.
Initially, and prices in how they're gonna sell those and whether it's gonna be an HOA or a straight single lot, so.
Yeah, and then the township then makes that judgment call that, okay, well, it's one less road that we would have to take care of if they don't do it by right, so we allow the higher density, and then we don't then have to, have a new dedicated road that we have to take care of. So you accept, more construction, more built, less open space in exchange for not having to then have the outlay for the maintenance for the road at this point. To then walk it back 20 years later, kind of defeats the purpose of that agreement in the first place. So that's why, without knowing exactly what was agreed to at that point, I just saw a hard
One
time.
would say it was forward thinking then, now that we all know that housing needs to become more dense and, in the housing dilemma that the whole country is under. So this is actually better for housing at this point, in decision that was made then. So again, this is why I'm just saying that if we aren't bogged down in all past decisions, it may be worthwhile.
There certainly are benefits to density, but there are also disadvantages to density, particularly with suburban, single family home development on here, where, we have a lot of stormwater problems within the township that a lot of people, other members of the public, have to then pay for, where they have water intrusion that they may not have had before due to development. It's no individual person's fault. It's not your HOA's fault that there's stormwater issues elsewhere, but it's the raindrop that causes the flood. There's a lot of this stuff that's happening in the township. That's why we have stormwater ordinances. That's why we have density requirements, why we have setback requirements. So yeah, again, without knowing the agreement 20 some years ago at this point, it's hard for me to say.
I don't either.
So it sounds like doesn't sound like there's a consensus to proceed. It sounds like there's a desire to have staff attempt to memorialize some of the things that might be helpful or to craft the argument. I just want to be careful that it's not an itemized list of what you need to do, like, that's one of the concerns I have, is it could be presented as, well, we satisfied the 4 things you told us. But I'll just memorialize the concerns that I've expressed to you, that I've expressed to Gretchen, and then you can decide if that's something that is helpful to convince the board. Have a plan?
Sure. So also one more thing, consider the consideration of the storm sewer system. It's currently private. If you dedicate the road, you would probably have to take that as well. You don't want a private storm sewer system in a public road. So that's the other aspect of it.
And nobody looked at the lighting, that was another one, we'd have to look at the lighting.
Okay. Yeah, Gretchen, is there anything?
That
else
is
you'd like to add?
noted, yep.
Okay, moving on to,
We're talking about Colleen's report, just Colleen.
oh yeah, Colleen.
She's on.
I have a question about the subdivision land development tracking. I don't, is Highland Avenue on here or not on? I don't see it on here, so I'm assuming it's not on here.
Highland, can everybody hear me?
You're good.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, Highland Avenue is on the list. It should be, the project number is SD 544. It's probably, I think the 3rd from the bottom. Oh, you know what? I apologize. Highland Avenue is not on there. It was moved to the construction list. So
Yeah.
Highland Avenue got recorded. I'm sorry, I apologize.
Yeah, so that's recorded, and recorded, it comes off the list, right, Colleen?
Yeah, recorded, it gets off the list and it gets put on the construction list. So if you want me to start adding the construction list to the packet, I absolutely can do that.
Michael, part of the, I don't, this is an artifact, we inherited it,
Right,
it made sense, so 8 years ago, that list was 15 subdivisions long, and the purpose of it, or at least for me, a sizable amount of the purpose was to ensure that you didn't miss any deadlines. So once it's constructed, the deadlines are no longer applicable, so we've been taking them off.
I'm not so worried about deadlines, I'm more worried about just knowing what's going on and what state things are in. That I'd be more interested in,
Yeah.
what's going on in our township and what's the state of them.
Very good.
I don't know how
Sure.
the rest of the feels, but that's what I'm interested in.
Oh, I like it. Okay.
Yeah, next month I can add the construction list. That's fine. That's easy.
Thanks.
Thank you, Colleen. Anything else from the departmental reports? Moving on to regular business, first on the agenda is federal grant status.
Yeah, John's gonna update you on that one.
Yeah, and just to clarify, there are some issues with federal grant funding, and I had asked John to just put together a list of grants that the township has applied for or is receiving that may be impacted by any sort of changes in federal grant writing. And John, can you describe what your findings are?
Sure, so in your packet tonight, I just have the brief summary of the grants that you're currently either applied for or received, and these are all the grants, these aren't federal, or they're not structured out as to the funding source. However, you're not currently receiving any direct funding from any federal sources at the moment. We did apply for a CDBG grant last year. That does come through the federal HUD program. You were not a recipient. We did not win the award on that one. So the one grant application I'm aware of in the last few years was that or another CDBG type grant. So currently you don't receive any direct federal funding. However, staff does receive regular updates from the different departments on the state level. So DCED, PennDOT, the MTF grants, any funding that is funneled through either PennDOT or DVRPC is at risk. So both agents, DVRPC is almost entirely federally funded, and then PennDOT is receiving large sums of federal highway fund money. There is a risk at some point in the future that a project that you've received money for gets clawed back. I don't believe it's a strong risk at the moment. Your projects are, in a good way, they're on the smaller side. You don't have any multi-million-dollar or $10 million projects that are really enticing to claw back to fill a budget gap from another source. But should PennDOT need to rebuild something and find every penny in every corner of the couch, they could come looking. And then the good news is if we spend them, they can't claw them back. So you awarded the bid tonight for the one DCD grant. Several of the grants on here are ones that we've already, are being utilized and drawn down on. And so that's sort of the status where we're at. We're not receiving any alerts from any of our agencies that make us concerned at the moment.
Very good. Well, I appreciate that, and if you could just keep us apprised as situations develop, I really appreciate it. Does anyone else have any comments?
Yeah, I don't see the fire company grants on here. Am I missing them?
So that did come through, that was awarded to the fire company.
Right, but if they get it clawed back, that would impact us, right?
Well, the RCAP that they did receive, that I think $2 million RCAP was a state grant, so that one's more on the safe side. There was a grant that they applied for through Representative Houlihan's office that has not been determined in any manner. I would surmise that it's doubtful to have much hope on that grant at this point.
Right, so that's about $1.5 million, but 30% of that would have been to East Town, so we won't get that. But that's probably not.
Yeah, it's hard to know on that one, but the RCAP is the same as all of your other state grants. It is it's a decent chunk of change, but it's legislatively initiated by Harrisburg, so that's not a PennDOT decision. That's all 201 legislators have to agree on that one. So,
Andy, do you want to update something in the
Yeah, only as part of the manager's report, we just wanted to give the board a heads up with event season, spring and summer event season coming. We're working on some technical amendments to the special event and community event permitting ordinance. And what we would do, unless there's objection, is administratively advertise that. We'll circulate it to the board in advance. It'll be on the public agenda. But we will move forward with the advertising, so you're in a position to act on that in March, before any of the spring and summer events get underway.
Good, thank you. Any other questions or comments related to federal grant status or what Andy just discussed? It's item B, 2025 Board of Supervisor projects.
Yeah, I'll update on three things, if
Sure.
it's okay. The sidewalks, we talked about that, so everything's aligned to budget. We're gonna get going on that tomorrow. I did meet with the financial advisor about capital planning. It was helpful to me. ECAC has that as a project. That can incubate through ECAC and come back to you. If you want me to explain it, I can explain it. You tell me. But even with no action, I anticipate a recommendation from ECAC. ECAC's recommendation is to just consider it, not to, so they're gonna come back in March with 5 or 6 little narratives about 5 or 6 subject areas that they want to explore. One of them is is to develop a capital plan. So the idea is, right now you're pay as you go mainly, and it would be to consider switching to another mechanism to fund your priorities. So it's expressed, they're not opining that somebody else's priorities are different than the township. That's not what this is. This is, if you're gonna fund these things, is it better to fund them through some kind of a capital planning mechanism? So comfortable with letting that come up organically from ECAC.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I have a question about sidewalks. I was at a social gathering recently and 2 moms came over and chatted with me about their kids in Devon and said that we need to do something about sidewalks around Devon, which I had never heard before. Is anybody familiar with that?
I have heard that in the general discussion of sidewalks in schools, I think it was explored at some point. For some reason, it was tabled for some reason, but I couldn't tell you why. I don't know if Don you remember.
Michael,
It's like when I first joined the PC.
there's no side, like my guess that their concern is that Fairfield doesn't have sidewalks. And I have a lot of kids that walk Fairfield. So I'm guessing that that's their concern. Like they go up Fairfield. I'm not sure. I don't think Exeter does either. So like around that neighborhood is where you have walkers. They go down Fairfield, they go, probably, I mean, I don't, maybe go to, Arlington and that area, but generally it's Fairfield. I think that they're most concerned about.
Isn't part of the issue that there are no sidewalks anywhere in that neighborhood? If I recall, that was part of the problem, is that there's no place to start.
So I'm looking at it right here. Exeter has a sidewalk and South Fairfield has a sidewalk, but then that last juncture getting to Devon doesn't have a sidewalk.
But if you look in that entire neighborhood though, like, yeah, I'm not disputing that.
Yeah.
What I mean is like that area generally, like there were no, if I recall, there were no clear connection points. And so that's why the PC was kind of like threw up their hands, because they're like, there's no, it's not like the Beaumont, right, where you have that big intersection and it's pretty clear you could put sidewalks there. But for some reason, this was an issue because apparently some residents didn't want it. A lot of parents obviously do want it. I mean, we could ask the PC, or the PC to explore it, but.
But the PC has already explored it, right? The comp plan is your exploration of it. And then what you've got is priority elements from the comp plan. So I think you have to be guarded against about going back to reevaluate what has already been expressed to you.
Yeah.
You're the sovereign, you get to do whatever you want.
Yeah, and I kind of disagree with that because we're halfway through the comp plan. We should have last year, revisited the comp plan. I think we are in a position at this point to revisit the comp plan.
But yeah, well, I think but to Don's point, I think what he's saying is that we did already do that evaluation where they triaged sidewalks and sidewalk placement. And like I caught the tail end of it, like I was involved in the whole process. But like part of the analysis, for whatever reason, Devon wasn't one of the top options. And I still think it's an option. It's just, it's not.
I had heard
prioritized.
a while ago that said there's no need for sidewalks anywhere around Devon, and I just let it go because I figured they knew what they were talking about. And now I've heard they didn't know what they were talking about from the different, it's certainly possible for two people to have different opinions about this. I just never heard the idea that there was a need for sidewalks around Devon before.
Michael, probably part of the issue that I'm guessing those parents came up with is when people come and it's more, I think, the morning and the pickup, there's just cars lined up everywhere and Fairfield's pretty heavily traveled. I think that's just the concern. Plus there tends to be a lot of vehicles parked on Fairfield, especially in the morning. There's a lot of those gardening vehicles at that like big estate. There's not a lot of room to maneuver around there. So I'm guessing that's where their concern lies. I could be wrong, but knowing it does connect, there is a crosswalk that does connect to a sidewalk that goes into Devon. So I'm guessing that might be some of their concern.
Right. And do you think COVID may have changed it, like Beaumont changed with COVID? Do you think Devon had the same kind of thing?
Oh yeah. I mean, if you go to a pickup at any of the schools that I've seen, pickup is, I mean, there are cars lined up down Fairfield, around onto Sugartown. I mean, it's crazy the number of cars that pick up now. So that's just my guess. It's just the increased number of cars at pickup and drop off. Drop off not as bad, but you do have kids who walk. So I'm guessing that's what they were concerned about.
But wouldn't sidewalks help alleviate that? Maybe it encourages more people to walk from a slightly further distance if they have a defined sidewalk and a defined safe route and crosswalks and such. Maybe it alleviates a little bit of the traffic. It's not going to solve the problem, but maybe it makes it a little bit better.
It definitely would make it safer. I mean, I've never heard a complaint about it, but based on what Michael's saying, I can kind of speculate that might be why they're complaining, based on the fact that there really is no way to get to Devon without, like, you can't get to the building from, and again, I can't speak for above Devon near Exeter, but you said there is sidewalk on Exeter, but I think that whole Fairfield Road has no sidewalks at all leading into Devon. So that, again, that might be one of the concerns there. Kids do bike to school in the warmer weather, and kids do walk. I do have walkers. So again, that might be some of the parents' concerns.
And I may have run into the only two parents who care, so you never know.
True.
I want to update you on two things about the LSA. In a meeting with Bauman about initiating that project. So we're gonna have a PSA before you in March. There were two things that came up that we want to get your input in before the March meeting. One was there's a sizable amount of public involvement. There's probably 10 public meetings or so, maybe 10 to 14, I forget the number. Right now it's with, the expectation is that that would be with the PC, not with an ad hoc group. If you recall, I don't know who was on the board, but with Devon Center, one of the outcomes from that was that the concern that the ad hoc group is created to, it sort of has a vested interest one way or another. If you want objective input, you use a standing committee. So you've had the planning commission active in this for years. So the intent is that the planning commission would be one of the venues for the public input. Does that sound acceptable to you?
And public input for
the LSA?
what's the LSA?
That's the Complete Streets project in Berwyn. So you have a grant to pursue that. So it's got a decent amount of public, it's a planning process, it's got a decent amount of public input. The public input is going to be at your board and at the PC.
Seems. But, yeah, it seems.
All right, and then the next item that came up that was triggered for us is this idea of road diet that is all over your comp plan and in your road SERP, and it's a commonly used term. Some of you will think it's great, some of you will think it's horrific.
Road diet.
Road diets, where the roads get thinner.
I think they're horrific.
Very good. So there's a sensitivity to it. There's a sensitivity that what some see as the solution, others think as the problem. Now, when all this was a concept in the comp plan 10 years ago, it didn't matter, but now it's gonna matter. So you don't have to settle this now. If you're comfortable with this approach, it might be that you can't have a road diet in Berwyn. It might be that the conditions won't allow it. So a component of the LSA is for the engineer to do an analysis and evaluate that. If the engineer comes back and says, hey, it just won't support a road diet, then that sends the plan off in one way. If the engineer says it does support a road diet, before you go down that route, you want to have the discussion about whether that is something with which you are agreeable.
Is the road diet making it just one way or just narrowing the street?
I think it's narrowing the number of lanes. I don't think there's any scenario that has it one way on Route 30.
Without getting into the weeds, I thought all that was analyzed. They looked at the width of the street and if you could have 2 sidewalks versus 1 sidewalk and a bike lane and 2 travel lanes versus 4.
Yeah, so it has to get a level more granular
Okay.
and, you know, this is preliminary engineering and so this isn't the, you know, the last image, they're just images of people having fun in the urban environment. And
Looks
that's-
good.
Yeah, it does look good, but that's not, the deliverable here is a plan that is informed by robust engineering. It's not the construction plan, but it's got a level of a component of this is the robust engineering to inform you about the practicality of that. So if you think it's a mistake, you'll have the chance to say that when you're reviewing that component. It might all be moot. It might be, hey, there's just no way. Road diet is one component of complete street. There's lots of other things you can do if you choose not to have a road diet. So, so clear enough, you understand the issue. And so you're comfortable with that part brewing up organically through the LSA process.
So we will see some sort of an analysis.
Yes,
and
at
then
some
we can argue
point, the
about it.
engineers will be before you and they will tell you what you conventionally call a road diet is impractical. It can happen. You can do complete streets, but you can't have road diet as part of it. Or they could come back and say, yeah, this is available to you. Here's why, that sort of thing.
Fine with me.
Is it just the engineers or with landscape architecture?
Well, the PSA you'll have, it'll be Bowman and Tom Committa. So, the exact, you'll see the PSA, so Bowman will be involved. That particular component is probably, more robust for the engineers. But you'll get both PSAs in, March is the intention. Okay, so solid little check-in point. We'll, have 2 PSAs before you in, March.
Moving on to liaison and work group reports. First up is the library board of trustees.
Yeah, hold on one second, just opening that up right now. They met on the 22nd of January. Foundation had a great year, continuing to raise money for their endowment. The Friends are having these book sales that are doing very well. They're continuing these First Friday sales. And Friends membership mailings are going out. There's a joint meeting of the Library Foundation and Friends meeting in April about their vision and working together. They're discussing building needs, America 250 and the kickoff in August and some of the ideas that are leading up to it and consideration of library policies. The library is having an event. Actually, they had an event on the 13th of February about the TE school fight. And they have a rain barrel workshop on Sunday, the 23rd. Their next meeting is the 26th at 7 p.m.
Thank you. Next up is the historical commission.
That's also me. So Waynesboro, they met on the 12th of February. Waynesboro came on, discussed some of the things they're having. They're about to kick off their spring season. They have a book series, a lecture series coming up, and Valley Forge Park Alliance presentation. William Penn and the Lenape, shaping the landscape. Tours are starting in April. There was an approval of a fence, PC review, concern about density increases, discussion of the new Mercedes building, that Studebaker building. They discussed America 250. Ann is going to a Chester County meeting to discuss further, and they're all going to kind of talk together about what they're doing. There's also discussion of a list of historical homes and the process of completing that, and also some of the historical markers for the township that are on order. Their next meeting is March 12th.
Thank you. Next up is the EMA.
EMA met on the 11th. The biggest item was there was a road sewer break. There was an 8-inch gravity pipe that broke on Chester Road near Waterloo. That was back in middle of December. So that was repaired. And I think as a result, we'll be paving that road in the spring and then videoing and cleaning both sides of the line just to get a visual to see what the condition is over there. Nothing else is pertinent for the group. Next meeting is on the 11th of March.
Very good. Next up is the Stormwater Management Advisory Committee.
SMAC also met on the 11th. They went over, they're focusing more on stormwater quality right now. So they went over the 2025 MS4 permitting projects. There was a presentation, but otherwise nothing pertinent for our group. Same thing, next meeting is on the 11th of March.
Very good. Next up is the police work group.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec met on the 19th of February, and they went over their goals for the year and events. Bluebird houses are coming up, the Purple Martin house is coming up at Hilltop, and some tree planting. About it.
Great. Next up is the PC, Planning Commission.
Yeah, I went to some of it, and then Eric, I think you finished it. Talk about the Delaware County Christian Elementary School, about the plans and in the pavilions they were going to build, some renovations and so on. The boot shop, and there was some discussion about the boot shop. And then what we just talked about, the sidewalk grant possibilities. And then I had to leave. So Eric, I know you came in to finish.
Yeah, there wasn't much after that, just kind of a public comment session. Next up is ECAC.
I had a calendar failure, so I wasn't actually able to attend, but I talked about it. I talked to people about it. They talked about the projects they're planning for 2025. They divided up into groups, into subgroups to do that. And they're coming back at the next meeting to put them together and bring them to us, I guess, the following, our next meeting.
Yes, that's it. You have like 4 calendars, how did you have a calendar failure?
I have no idea. I have absolutely, and the night before I had a different failure, and it was a bad week for me. I don't know.
Alright, next up is the finance work group.
We met, but it was about different things pertaining to township finance. And Don, I mean, that was more internal things, correct?
Yeah, I think so, probably discuss all of them.
Okay. Next up is fire EMS.
I didn't,
You were there?
I can't make the one tomorrow,
I didn't bring my notes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know if we met since the last time, did we?
Probably not.
Yeah, I think, because I recall that we updated them the last time, so
Yeah, that
they
makes-
they
that's
meet
very
tomorrow,
right.
so
Yeah.
that is aligned to the time.
Next up is AC, they haven't met yet. Neighborhood Watch has not met. HR work group, I don't believe has met.
The 1st of February, the first Monday in February, that.
Oh, that's correct. Sean, did.
Yeah,
Sean, do you have-
I may have gotten finance and HR mixed up, but HR did meet just to discuss
Yeah,
some internal things about,
we just briefed you on a few things brewing.
yeah.
And pension work group is set to meet.
Week after next, sometime in March, it's all set.
Very good. Moving on to public comment, is there any public comment? Sure.
I just wanted to follow up on the proposed, draft ordinance, related to the pickleball in the township, not only at the Y, but at other locations. What is the status of the draft?
I think not to speak for the board, excuse me, but there is some work at the staff level in my office. I think you will see, if the board feels it is ready, a draft ordinance for the March meeting.
Mhm.
And if the board is comfortable with it and moves it in, it would involve a referral to the county planning commission and the township planning commission, because it's a zoning ordinance. So the process is potentially March discussion and then 30-day referral. And if those referrals go smoothly, action after that 30-day period.
And then how long is the public comment period?
Well, so a draft, if the board is ready for it, a draft would be on the agenda for the next meeting. So the board will take public comment as much as the public has comment. But then it's also going to go to the planning commission. And the board, under the municipality's planning code, has to hear from the township planning commission. So that meeting will also be public.
Mhm.
And the planning commission can make any comment, they'll take public comment, and then they'll provide a recommendation back to the board.
So there's not a designated, has to be 30 days or something for public comment? or-
Public comment is at the public meetings.
Okay, only.
Correct.
Okay.
The statutory process is the county planning commission, and the township planning commission would have to provide comments back to the board. The county planning commission is usually a paper review.
Mhm.
But the township planning commission, that's regular public meeting, so the public will have, I would say, 3 opportunities.
Okay.
In March, if the draft is ready for the board to discuss,
Okay.
the planning commission that would follow that meeting, and then a final action meeting by the board on the ordinance itself. So there will be 3 public opportunities for comment.
And so would that be on the agenda? If it's ready for the March meeting, would it be on the agenda as
Yes.
such?
For March, yep.
Okay.
Typically with a memo and a draft that is part of the packet for everybody to
Right.
see.
Right, okay, so given that, sounds like there's gonna be some time and we're coming up to April timeframe where, people wanna get outside, start playing pickleball. I'm just a little concerned about how that might brush up into time when the Y might be moving their proposal forward or moving their planning forward. How would that all tie together?
So if an ordinance moves forward, there's a statutorily required process, so that time is what it is. You can't override the municipality's planning code.
So hypothetically, if they decided to paint pickleball courts on the back tennis courts, and the ordinance is not ready, then we're kind of in a difficult position.
The Y has represented that they're not going to do that. But when an ordinance is made public, there's also something called a pending ordinance rule that may prevent a developer or landowner from moving forward if an ordinance is public. So there may be some protection in that too.
So.
I can't get into every hypothetical with you though.
Sure, if I understand, I want to understand the process and make sure that we're being forward thinking about trying to prevent a situation that a lot of residents don't want.
And I think the township is doing its best with the procedural requirements it has to follow. So the very next public meeting, if the board is ready, I expect a draft ordinance to be in front of them and an opportunity for public comment.
Okay, and did I hear you say that Y isn't planning to?
I believe they publicly represented that they have no plans to expand in that back area anytime in the near future. And I think that's part of the record of that public meeting discussion.
They said that at a public meeting, I think it was like end of November or the first meeting in December. That's what they said. Now,
I can't guarantee.
yeah, they're not beholden to it, but
Of
they,
2024.
yeah, just 2 months ago. They said that they were not interested in relocating the courts. Now, it could be lying, but that's what they said.
Okay,
I go to one neighbor who's very concerned about them moving the pickleball courts there. As far as we know, there's no plan that we're aware of or have been asked to approve or anything like that. So I'm not sure where that individual got his information, but he was very concerned about that. But we're acting in accordance with the changes that were.
In that process that you described, we advertise it at the end, so we approve it in April, it goes out for advertisement, and then we approve it in May.
You could do, if you're trying to expedite it, at the March meeting, you could publicly act both to refer it to the planning commissions and advertise. The only gap there is if you get comments from either planning commission that you want to incorporate, we would need to re-advertise. But you could fast track it for not a big expense for legal advertising, so you're in a position to do it more quickly and not wait another month after the planning commission.
thank you.
Sure.
Any other public comment? Okay, Pat. All right, showing no other public comments. I'm going to-
Go ahead, JR.
Hi, it's JR Pawada. Just a quick follow-up on Libby's questions. Is the draft presently being worked on by your staff?
Yes, at the staff level.
Okay, and can you talk about the nature of it? Is it both to restrict sound and set new sound standards, or, there are multiple ordinances that have been put in place. Some are all consuming and encompassing, others are less so. May I ask what avenue you are heading down relative to the restrictions on the play of pickleball?
I think the staff is working through that right now, but one kind of broad concept would be a conditional use requirement for any new pickleball, any conversions after the date of the ordinance, or any type of use of a surface after the date of the ordinance.
And that would include noise restriction requirements, noise dampering, et cetera?
Yes, and I think the best thing I can offer is that when the packet goes out, a draft will be in there and the world can see what the draft contains. But
Fantastic.
Those are the broad parameters.
Thank you so much. And my next question is, you've said 3 times, if the board is ready for it, is there any reason why the board would not be ready to entertain it in March?
I don't think so, but the chair sets the agenda. And I never presuppose to act for the board. But I think the board's expectation is that it's going to be on the agenda at the next meeting.
Fantastic.
And I'm seeing nods of heads nodding yes.
Thank you. Appreciate everyone's time and effort. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other public comment? Hearing none. Moving on to announcements, upcoming meetings and events. The following meetings are scheduled to be held in the Township Building unless otherwise noted. February 19th at 6 p.m. will be the Parks and Rec Board. 7:15 p.m. will be the EAC. On February 20th, 7 p.m. will be the Zoning Hearing Board. On February 26th at 7 p.m. at Easttown Library will be the Library Board of Trustees meeting. On March 4th at 7 p.m. will be the Planning Commission. March 10th at 6:15 p.m. will be the Easttown Citizens Advisory Committee meeting. On March 11th at 6:15 p.m. will be the Stormwater Management Committee meeting. At 7:15 on that same day will be the EMA meeting. And on March 12th will be the Historical Commission. And on March 17th at 7 p.m. will be the next Supervisors meeting. That concludes the agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
And just note, I understand the board will hold an executive session immediately after for matters of litigation, real estate, and personnel.
That is correct. Thank you. I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Very Thanks, everybody. Thank you.